Today on the Locked On Blues podcast, the Blues are back, sort of. They lost 7-2, and then they won 4-1. So got a little bit of bad news, a little bit of good news. We're going to be talking about both. And then majority of this episode, we're going to be talking about number 91, Vladimir Tarasenko, as he became the fifth Blue ever to reach 500 points, scoring an empty net goal to close out the game. Seemed real happy about it. So we're going to be talking about him and maybe what it would take to get his number retired up into the rafters. Action-packed episode. Lots to talk about. Make sure you stay tuned.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and your number one source for daily Blues content. I'm your host, Josh Hyman, and I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Thomas Welch. We got a busy episode for you guys, much like the Blues had a very busy weekend. They came out against one of the top teams in the league, the Carolina Hurricanes, and got smacked, and I was a little worried. And then they came out against the Vancouver Canucks and smacked them, much like Will Smith smacked, Chris Brown.
Chris Rock, baby. Oh, Jesus. That would go down a slippery slope there.
Much like Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars, which, okay, I know the Blues won some hockey games, and we're going to get into that, but I need to talk about this with somebody else. What? Fiction. Like, I mean, fact or fiction?
Is it real or fake, Josh?
Real or fake? I mean,
they're actors, but he looked pretty mad to me.
So I think it was. If I'm putting money on it today, I'm saying it's probably real. But at the same time, there's legitimate arguments. They are actors. The Oscars is a dying industry. They would love to get as many eyes on them as they did with this. This is like the biggest pop culture event in forever. So it reminds me of like Janet Jackson at the Super Bowl forever ago.
I was thinking too, like I can't remember the last time we had like a bona fide, like solid meme circulate just from something like happening like this. And I was like, wow, it's been a minute.
I don't know.
That happened pretty fast.
Yeah.
The memes came out in full force.
I don't think it was staged. I don't think it was fake. I think the Academy is a little too pretentious for that. But that being said, all of a sudden, Chris Rock's stand-up comedy tour sold out within like 2 days of the event happening. That video has gotten more views than like any other video on the internet of all year. If I'm Will Smith or Chris Rock, I'm sitting down looking at my bank account, talking to my PR manager, and maybe this isn't the worst thing.
Yeah,
so,
maybe I don't know. Fly off the rails more often. I think it's 100%
honestly,
real.
I do too. I do too.
And just from being a communications major, now on the outskirts here, you might say communication major. You just went the easy route to get a degree. No. That's part of it, but you also learn a lot. And what I did learn in my nonverbals class is a lot. And I think Will Smith, when he said, "Keep my wife's name out your mouth," he gets tight-lipped and he blinks pretty hard when he says that to emphasize the point that he's making. We're not to psychoanalyze him here.
I was going to say we're turning into one of those
definitely
those psychology videos where they
gotta break it down.
Interrogation tapes and be like, you can see here that the suspect raised his left
foot
at a 45-degree angle when telling that story, thus indicating a 45% chance of an eye. Anyways. Speaking of
psychoanalyzing,
speaking of psychoanalyze, good luck trying to psychoanalyze the Blues, because we have seen a tale of two teams lately. After an uninspired performance heading into the weekend, and then another extremely uninspiring performance against the Carolina Hurricanes, which they're lucky that game happened on a weekend, or else that episode would have been rowdy. I went into last night's game against the Vancouver Canucks with very low expectations and was just like, please don't embarrass me again. That's about where I was at. I was sick of getting texts from my friends like, so the Blues, ... ? Like, No, I
You see
don't
the
like being.
tweets too from like
Yeah,
Canadian
exactly.
like
I
accounts
I
that are
was
like,
sick
"What
of
are the
it.
Blues doing?"
I was like, all right, at least like give a performance you can be proud of, because like that's what we were saying that they had to do on Saturday and they didn't. Granted, it was against the Carolina Hurricanes, so maybe you could take that with a grain of salt, but whatever. And then they come out against the Vancouver Canucks and win in pretty convincing fashion, 4-1. Not like their typical just we're gonna outscore you. Doesn't matter how many goals you get. No, they struggled. They had a rough period in the second, but yet they still came away with a victory, and it's the type of victory. Maybe unfortunately not against one of the top teams in the league, but it's the type of victory that you can say, okay, if they play like that in a playoff game, they might not get blown out. That being said, I don't know if we can determine that the performance against the Canucks is indicative of how the rest of the season is going to go, because as we've seen, especially post All-Star break, the Blues have had zero consistency, and that has been both good and bad. They've blown teams out, they've gotten blown out, and none of that translates into the next game. The good thing is for them is they're playing the Canucks again tomorrow night, late game. So if there's ever a chance to continue that momentum, might as well do it against the same exact team that you had, your best game in 2 weeks against. I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly. And I think we talked a lot on this podcast about playing with fire, playing with intensity, playing with emotion. And it sounded like the Blues did that because Scandella's comments after the game kind of mirrored that intensity. So he said we played them in the playoffs, obviously in the bubble. It was an interesting series. So to beat this team, it feels good. And we got another big game against them in Vancouver. So we're going to have to come out and be sharp in their building. He also said that we lost to them in the playoffs a few years ago. We hate this team. Every
Oof.
game is important down the stretch, and we needed this one before this important road trip. So I was always told growing up, Josh, that hate is a strong word. So that kind of
Strongly
rings bells.
dislike.
Yeah, so that kind of rings bells in my mind for this team, but rightfully so. I mean, the Blues definitely got embarrassed in the playoffs against the Vancouver Canucks, and they came out and took advantage of, I feel like, a flat-footed Blues team that didn't really find its identity, whether it was because they weren't playing in front of crowds or didn't have that emotion or whatever it was. But I feel like that was a similar problem with what the team was facing currently against the Canes and against the Flyers, and finding that intensity and finding that tenacity. I feel like it was a similar problem in the bubble. So for them to come out kind of in a statement game against the Vancouver Canucks and get on top of them early, that's something that we were talking about, and everyone surrounding the Blues was talking about, including Craig Berube. He was like, we got to stop playing from behind. You obviously, any team, especially this team, has high octane power and they're capable of scoring. But when you're putting yourself down 2 goals every single game, it's hard to climb that mountain over the course of 60 minutes. So what did they do? They came out first period, put 2 up on them, came out in the second, was a little bit rough. Vancouver Canucks poured it on and tried to make it a game, but thankfully Ville Husso shut the door on them and they didn't score in the second, and they came out in the third, scored right away, and that was pretty much all she wrote. So it's a good performance from the Blues to bounce back after a rough one against the Canes, but they got to do it again tomorrow.
Yeah, and one guy that had a huge role in that performance and also cemented his name in Blues history is Vladimir Tarasenko, who had 2 goals and an assist to bring him to 500 career points for the St. Louis Blues, joining elite company. So we're going to be talking about that. Lots to unpack there, because if you didn't know, he kind of requested a trade recently. So lots to unpack. But obviously, we're going to be singing his praise. Should be on the segment. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But first, if you think Vladimir Tarasenko is going to continue his hot streak and put up some more goals against the Vancouver Canucks tomorrow night, you got to check out Bet Online. Now, after months of playing, college basketball has determined the top teams for the Final Four. Unfortunately, St. Peter's isn't there, but they will determine this year's national champion this coming week. My money's on Duke, like we've talked about. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, you name it, BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports developments, including podcasts and reviews for all the leagues this season. And it's not just basketball, of course. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts, and we'll be right back. All right, Tommy. So there was some history made last night in St. Louis as Vladimir Tarasenko had a goal and assist heading into the final few moments of the game, putting him at 499 points. And then he fires a puck into the empty net for his second goal of the night. And more importantly, his 500th goal, or 500, not 500th goal, I wish, 500th point.
Sidney Crosby coming for
as
it.
a member of the St. Louis Blues, joining, I might need help here, Tommy, joining Brett Hull, Bernie Federico,
Yep.
Sutter,
yep,
and Unger, correct?
There you go. Bingo.
Boom. Look at that. Passed my history exam. So
the only one of those players whose number is not
there.
retired is Unger and Tarasenko.
So we'll get into that. But first things first, I don't want to make this, a negative, I can't believe you requested a trade. But, I mean, the fact that, a couple months ago we were all planning on Vladimir Tarasenko getting traded and then watching him, grinning ear to ear, thanking the fans, which, to be fair, Vladimir Tarasenko will thank the fans after he does anything. It doesn't matter. He could have scored the game, game 7 game-winning goal of the Stanley Cup. He could be interviewed on the side of the street after rushing into a burning building and saving, a litter of kittens. So first things first. I just want to thank the support of my fans every time, like clockwork. But it felt different. It felt like a real genuine smile. It felt like he, loved that moment. It truly meant a lot to him to join that club, and the fans let him hear it. Big standing ovation. They've been supporting him all season. Just the turnaround of my emotions towards Leonard Tarasenko is spectacular this season. I didn't think we'd see the day that we'd be celebrating his 500th point after the offseason in the way that went. But that being said, here we are. So before we get into the whole jersey retirement thing, Tommy, what did that night, mean for you in terms of Vladimir Tarasenko in the short term? Before we get into his long term scope.
Yeah, so short term, Albert Pujols comes back to the city of St. Louis, where he grew up and became a Hall of Fame, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, and announces that it will be his last season in the MLB. He's going out with potentially Adam Wainwright, although that hasn't been announced yet, but will be going out with Yadier Molina, who, they've won championships together. They got all their accolades together. So for that to happen, and then for Tarasenko, who obviously another St. Louis staple and has been the poster boy for Blues hockey for since the time he's come into the league and played for this team, for him to go out and score his 500th point on the same night, it warms your insides as a St. Louisan. It's just like it's that nationality feeling. Obviously, it's not a nation, but it's just the pride of St. Louis and how proud you are of
Blues, baby.
Yeah, it really
proud
is.
member.
It's just I consider myself lucky to be a St. Louis sports fan because the culture here runs so deep in history and excitement and passion and all those things. So for all of it to kind of encapsulate itself in the form of one night is nothing short of spectacular. And I feel like what you're talking about with Vladdy and like thanking the fans as often as he does, like I could see how it might just be like almost like a cookie cutter, like knee jerk reaction in anything that he does.
I don't think so though.
But with Vladdy, it really does feel like it's genuine every time. And I don't think he would mention it if it didn't mean so much to him, because if you remember, like the dude barely even spoke English. I don't think he spoke English at all when he first came over. And like he grew up here. He started a family here. He made friends here. He made records here. He won a Stanley Cup here. So like, even if he does leave and pulls like, does still want to get traded at the end of the day, like St. Louis is always going to have a special place in his heart. But that being said, with the recent comments from Doug Armstrong saying that hasn't even been an issue or a problem all season long since the beginning of the year, the way that he beams every time that the crowd chants Vladdy, like just booming, dude. Even over the TV, like I feel like I'm there, like in the crowd, and I start chanting along. So you can see like his face just lights up every single time, and I can't under any circumstances think that he would still want to leave the city of St. Louis.
Yeah, and it's got to be like, it must have been terrifying for him, seeing that story leak that I'm sure he wasn't planning on, ever going public, obviously, because like we talked about, there are plenty of trade requests that never get fulfilled and never go public. And I'm sure, the fans meaning so much to him, and the fact that he hadn't played in front of a full house consistently for a long time, probably terrified that the fans were going to turn on him, knowing how much that, that the fans mean to him and how much, he feels like he owes to the fans and is so grateful. If he went out there, night one and got booed, forget it. That's burning the bridge. And I don't want to say the Blues fans had right to do so, but I feel like you see that a lot in sports. Look at Ben Simmons and the Philadelphia 76ers. Freaking brutalized him. Obviously different circumstances, but
Look at DeBrusque.
yeah, exactly. So not only did Blues fans not turn on him, they said, hey, we're going to remind you just how much we love you. We're going to cheer for you a little bit more this year. And
Eichel as well. I mean, his homecoming was brutal.
yeah, and like I don't want to say, oh, he's not gonna request a trade now because he loves the fans, but heck, if the fans are the most important thing to me, and I was on the fence, and all of a sudden you got them chanting my name every other night, you get your 500th point, kind of a reminder of all the reasons you love to play in St. Louis. Plus, the Russians there. I am more convinced now than ever that if there's a chance that Vladimir Tarasenko doesn't want to get traded anymore, this is the most I've ever been convinced since the day that the news story dropped.
I'm 100% with you there. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually plays out the entirety of his contract and re-signs with the St. Louis Blues.
Yep, exactly. I'm in the same boat as you are, especially, with the changing in the guard. Who knows? Maybe after Ryan O'Reilly's moved on from, maybe Tarasenko the next captain. You never know. Lots to get into. In the third segment, we're talking about Vladimir Tarasenko's jersey number and whether or not it could potentially find a spot up in the rafters someday. And then also just giving our overall wrap up on a crazy weekend in Blues hockey, what it means. Are they a playoff team? Who knows? Lots to talk about. Make sure you stay tuned. But first, want to tell you guys about our good friends over at Rock Auto. Now, with the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. So why endure often pointless or even intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry when you have access to rockauto.com at home on your computer and in your pocket on your mobile device? You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more from a chain store or car dealership? For example, if let's say you got a Honda Odyssey and you're looking for a fuel pump, that'll range you about $353 from your local chain store. Right now on Rock Auto, $216. That's a huge discount. And Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. So go to their easy-to-use website today to find the solution for your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com, and we'll be right back. All right, Tommy. So obviously, we can't predict the future. If we did, we'd be a heck of a lot better at this whole podcast thing. We'd have the best takes all the time. But, in your best estimate, given all the drama, all the success, is Vladimir Tarasenko on track to have his jersey retired to the rafters of the Enterprise Center?
That's tough.
I know. There's no right answer.
Especially because Unger's number isn't retired. And that dude put up a lot of points for the St. Louis Blues. I think the big thing that sets Tarasenko apart, obviously the goal scoring capability is huge, and like the impact that he's had on this team for so long. I mean, like I said, he's like the poster boy for Blues hockey since the time that he joined the team. And he's only been with the Blues for his entire career so far. Like we said, there's a trade request. We know. But like when you think of St. Louis Blues hockey, one of the first names you think of is Vladimir Tarasenko and has been for the last 10 years. So, and I think the thing that sets him apart from every other name on that list is the Stanley Cup that he won and helped bring to the city of St. Louis. So he's at 500 points right now. 75 points puts him either tied with or above Gary Unger. So to move up that list, I mean, I would have to say in terms of projection and especially with the way that he played this season, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that his number will be retired eventually for the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah. I think, looking at numbers and stats and trade rumors, whatever, you can get a little muddled. But the way that I look at it is this. This is objectively the most successful era of Blues hockey ever. The last 10 years, you look at those charts of wins, playoff wins over the last 10 years. Blues are always right at the top. They have not had a bad team in a long time. They won a Stanley Cup, even if they hadn't won a Stanley Cup, whatever. This is a memorable era of Blues hockey. You look at, teams and eras. You got the teams of the early 2000s, 90s, 80s, whatever. This is a significant era of Blues hockey. It, like I said, probably is the most successful era of Blues hockey. And that's how I look at jersey retirements. We saw Chris Pronger's number get retired recently. Probably maybe the last of his era to get his number retired. I could be missing a few names there, but now all of a sudden you're looking at, okay, who's going to be remembered for this era of Blues hockey? Alex Pietrangelo, captain, first Blues player to ever lift the Stanley Cup, and Vladimir Tarasenko. That's it. Those are your 1 and 2. It's non-negotiable, not debatable. And if you're going to retire Pietrangelo, you're going to retire Tarasenko. Absolutely. So I think, right now, him playing, it's a little bit less clear, but I think in 10 years when he's retired, 15 years when they're talking about jersey retirement, it's like, oh, of course, he was the guy on the best 10 years of Blues hockey that fans had really ever seen up until that point in terms of playoff success and consistency and all that. So yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. Obviously, if there's an ugly breakup this offseason or something, maybe it gets a little bit more complicated, but I think it's a no-brainer.
Do you think they retire? So you think they retire Petrangelo's number as well? I feel like that one's more difficult.
I agree because
he's
for
got
all
a long
the same
contract with Vegas.
Mm-hmm. For all the same reasons I just outlined with Tarasenko, is if you're looking at it based on eras, and you're looking at the guy that your captain, your first Stanley Cup, that's a strong argument. But in terms of accolades and numbers and stuff, he doesn't quite have the resume that Tarasenko has because he wasn't here, or maybe he will be, but at the all said and done, Tarasenko presumably will likely have a longer Blues tenure than Pietrangelo. So I don't know. I mean, I would not be surprised to see both of their numbers retired. This is, again, a conversation for a whole nother episode.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at it in terms of eras and impact, you can't ignore probably the 1 and 2 guys that, led you on this 7-8 year stretch of successful hockey that culminated in the Stanley Cup. And both of those two had a big part in it. But we're talking about Vladdy right now. I don't want to spark up bad memories with the Alex Pietrangelo debate.
Yeah.
That being said, though, Tommy, I think we've done Vladdy plenty of justice. So thinking about Vladimir Tarasenko, thinking about the way that the Blues played in this 4-1 victory against the Vancouver Canucks, in the final few minutes of today's episode, got to start thinking about the home stretch of the season. Blues have been extremely inconsistent. That's no secret, but they did win their most recent game, and it's easier to win after a win, you assume, than it is after a loss because you know what you did right last game, especially when you're playing the same team. So I feel like we've asked this question so many times and the answers have been changing so frequently. But as of right now, what do you think the direction of this team is? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? And do we have the pieces to not embarrass ourselves in the playoffs like we have in the last 2 seasons?
Well, yeah, here's the thing with that is if you continue to drop games like the trend looked like they were doing, if you end up in a wild card spot, you're either playing the Avalanche in round 1 or you're playing the Calgary Flames. So that's kind of a nightmare scenario for the St. Louis Blues. Yeah, so if you could stay out of a wild card spot, I think the Blues live to see another day. Nathan MacKinnon, I think, flew back to Denver to get some reports on his hand that he messed up while fighting. So I know everybody loves seeing Vladimir Tarasenko fight, but I'm kind of happy that he doesn't fight as often as McKinnon because this is the kind of stuff that can happen. And if he's seriously banged up and it's going to last up to or through the playoffs, that's a huge loss. Even if he plays through it, that's a huge loss from him not being 100% for the Avalanche. So for the Blues to be successful, I think it rides on a lot of what made them successful in their game against the Canucks, which is number 1, get on top of teams and stay out in front. And number 2, be physical. 28 hits in the last game. I feel like they haven't been banging bodies at all against the Canes and against the Flyers. And I feel like that's what Scandella was talking about. They're a heavy team. They win games when they're playing low, when they're going to the dirty areas of the ice, and when their will to get the puck from the other team is stronger than the other team's will to keep it. And I feel like that has been the success for the St. Louis Blues for the last 5 to 7 years now.
Right.
And just because their style and their speed and their skill has changed, I don't think their mindset in that category should.
Right, right. Yeah, and like I think the fact that, they won in the way that they did, they didn't win in typical Blues fashion for this season. They weren't just outscoring the other team regardless of defensive play. They won in the way you'd win a playoff game, empty net goal at the end. Score was a little bit less close than the game actually was. All those sort of things. That combined with Scandella's comments, I'm feeling pretty good about the direction of this team because like we've been talking about, they've been underachieving as of late for sure. This isn't a team that should miss the playoffs. It's not like, they were playing too good for what they were made of and then kind of fell back down to earth. And the Blues we saw the last 2 weeks was the Blues we should have been seeing all season. It's the other way around. So still definitely big question marks, especially with the inconsistency. But if there was ever a performance you could have put out after, 2 embarrassing performances, that 4-1 victory is something to definitely be proud of. And let's hope that they can expand upon that tomorrow night, late game in Vancouver. We should have a preview, a full preview out for you guys before the game, since it is at 10 Eastern. Probably, probably 2 hours, hour and a half before the game.
Give me a full 60. That's what I want, Blues.
Yeah.
If you're looking, if you're watching, give me a full 60.
They are.
No second periods off. I know it gets hectic out there. You want to sit back a little bit. You get a 2-0 lead, you want to skate around, maybe breathe for a little while. No.
Mm-mm.
Take it to them.
Mm-mm.
Give me a 6-0 win. Nothing would make me better. If you really hate the Vancouver Canucks like you say you do, go out and embarrass them. How about that?
Oh yeah. I would love that. So we're gonna have that all for you here on the Locked On Blues podcast. So make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching. Like I said, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Locked On Blues. Leave a comment. We try to reply, interact with all your guys' comments. It's a lot of fun doing that. Follow us on all of our socials at Locked On Blues on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. You can follow Tommy. Oh my God, Tommy on Twitter. I'll never get the point right. Tommy on Twitter at TWelcher15. But for now, thanks so much for listening. And as always, let's go Blues.